What was that disgusting creature just now? Don't tell me my camera's malfunctioning. Was that flesh? Ugh, that's disgusting. Sky, are you crazy? How much pressure must she have been under to hurt herself so recklessly like that? Whatever. Cases like this are for the cops to handle. I'm just a journalist, so I'll grab a few shots for reference while I can.
We need to collect your statement and the evidence at the scene. Please cooperate.
Wait a sec, officer. This is my work gear. Good thing I was smart enough to back up all the photos to the cloud. I came to Sky's concert today to cover a story, but I didn't expect to end up witnessing a live suicide scene. Wait, why is the audience reacting so weirdly?
Shin, you're really lucky, you know that? Your report today is definitely going to hit the hot search.
Yeah, I'm organizing the materials for the post, but this photo looks kinda strange. The photo I was just looking at was different, wasn't it? Am I hallucinating or something?
I don't see anything weird. You're probably just stressed out from seeing all that gruesome stuff. Once you've posted the article, take the rest of the day off.
Got it, thanks boss. From the concert venue to the police station for a statement, then back to the office to publish the article. It's been almost 24 hours without sleep. What the? Why are you here looking for me? You want me to pull that mic out for you or something? Hey! Was that just a dream? Guess I'm just too exhausted today. I slept straight through until 10 a.m. Rushing to the fridge to grab something to eat, I found the stuff inside all messed up, like something had been rifling through it. But I didn't have time to dwell on it. But along the way, I kept feeling strange stares boring into me. When I turned to look at them, they just stared back with these eerie, twisted smiles, trying to scare me. Please, I'm scarier than any ghost. Just then, the crossing signal sounded and I quickly stepped onto the street. Suddenly, a piercing siren blared, and I saw a car speeding towards me, ready to crush me. I jumped aside just in time, barely saving my life. Once I made it across, I realized I had just run a red light. But I swear I heard the signal go off. And that's when that creature appeared again. The strange hallucinations nearly killed me. I decided to take leave from work and see a doctor immediately.
The results of your MRI and psychological test show some abnormalities. Look here, this is your amygdala, the part that regulates fear. But yours has calcified. It's possible you have a condition called Urbach-Wiethe syndrome, which makes you unable to feel fear. It's caused by a lack of dopamine in your brain, but all your other emotions seem normal.
Not feeling fear, but what does fear even feel like?
Shin, I just got word that everyone who attended Sky's concert is showing signs of depression. Over 10 suicides have already happened. You'd better stay in the hospital for now.
Yes, thanks boss. I'll be careful. My journalist instincts, recent experiences, and the disturbances at home confirm it. That monster is nearby. All I need to do is set up some surveillance cameras and quietly wait for the results. Another peaceful night passed without any strange dreams. I checked the fridge, and once again something had been there and eaten all the raw food. My job now was to review the camera footage and wait for my enemy to reveal itself. Everything seemed normal until 1:40 a.m. I saw a small creature crawl out of my ear. This creature was parasitizing my brain, so it's the one causing my hallucinations? Suddenly, a crimson hand appeared from behind, pulling my mouth into a grotesque smile. It was that monster. It was trying to fight back, but my heartbeat slowed and my mind was sharper than ever. The monster was so desperate to resist that it couldn't even create a complete illusion. I easily broke through it. It's time to deal with that monster. I'm thrilled. You monster! If you're smart, crawl out now, or we'll both die together. Suddenly, a sharp pain struck my head. Looks like the monster is afraid now. I can feel it crawling out of my head. The monster in front of me grew quickly, fueled by a terrible rage.
You foolish human. Do you really think you can escape?
Why not? With the home camera still recording, I'm about to go full badass and take this monster down. Tomorrow's news will be lit. A needle pierced the monster's heart, but my brain throbbed in pain as if something had stabbed through it as well.
We are one now. If I die, you won't survive either.
Currently, his biological responses and brain activity are still like that of a normal person. The creature's smile can't consume the dopamine in his amygdala and can't kill Shin to find a new host. Now it has consumed and replaced his brainstem.
All right, Alex, you know the rules.
Amy teased, her voice echoing in the empty mall. She stood across from me, a playful smile dancing on her lips.
I hide. You find me if you can.
She pressed her finger to her lips and then blew me a kiss before darting off into the shadows. I chuckled nervously, trying to shake off the unsettling vibe of this abandoned place. The mall had been shut down for years, long enough for dust to cover every inch and mannequins to be left in strange poses, scattered like forgotten puppets. I turned to face the cracked, peeling wall, closed my eyes, and began counting. 1, 2, 3. Something about this place felt wrong. I couldn't pinpoint it, but the silence was too thick, almost alive. 8, 9, 10. I turned around, the dim light from the mall's broken skylights casting long shadows across the decaying floor. A sense of dread washed over me, but I shrugged it off. It's just a game, I reminded myself. Just hide and seek like we used to play as kids. I started walking, scanning the wide corridors littered with mannequins. They were everywhere, more than I remembered seeing before. Some were leaning against the walls, while others were sprawled out on the ground in bizarre, almost disturbing poses. One was even standing on one leg, arms outstretched as if reaching for something. The way they were positioned didn't seem random. They looked like they were caught in the middle of something awful. I walked faster, my heart starting to pound in my chest. "Amy!" I called out, my voice shaky. No answer. That's when I saw her. A silhouette at the end of the hallway, half hidden in the shadows. It had to be her. I grinned and took a few steps closer. But as I approached, something felt wrong. The figure wasn't moving. She stood unnaturally still, her head cocked slightly to the side, and the faint sound of gasping breaths echoed through the silence. It wasn't Amy. It couldn't be. The figure shifted, its body contorting into a grotesque pose. High-pitched, gasping breaths filled the air, and its head jerked up. I could see it now. It wasn't a person at all. It was a mannequin. But unlike the others, this one was alive. its mouth stretching into a grotesque grin, its eyes wide and unblinking. The mannequin let out a giggle, a sick, distorted sound, and started walking toward me, its body twisting into exaggerated, provocative poses as it moved. Its arms moved unnaturally, its legs bending as though its joints were dislocated. The closer it got, the more horrifying its movements became. "Amy!" I called out again, panic rising in my throat. This wasn't a game anymore. Something was very, very wrong. I stumbled backward, my legs shaking as the mannequin crept closer, giggling and gasping, its face twisted with a manic glee as it walked toward me. Its head snapping back to stare directly at me, unblinking. I turned and ran, heart racing, desperate to find Amy and get the hell out of this place. But mannequins were everywhere now, in poses that looked like they had been brutally attacked. Some had their limbs twisted in ways that made my stomach turn, while others looked like they had been mid-scream, frozen in place. Each one seemed to be watching me. Then I heard it, louder this time. The high-pitched whimpering, mixed with agonizing screams. I stopped dead in my tracks, my blood running cold. A shadow moved at the edge of my vision. Before I could react, someone grabbed me from behind. I spun around, ready to fight, but it was Amy. Only she didn't look right. Her clothes were torn and her skin was pale, almost translucent. She was trembling, her eyes wide with terror.
Alex, we need to leave, now!
I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could say anything, that sound, the giggling, filled the air again. It was closer. I turned just in time to see the mannequin from before charging at us, moving faster than anything that lifeless should. It let out an ear-piercing screech as it lunged toward us, its fingers twisting, snapping off and reshaping into sharp, jagged points. Before I could react, it shoved me aside, sending me crashing into the floor. I watched in horror as it grabbed Amy, forcing her down.
Alex!
She screamed as the mannequin's sharpened fingers drove into her arm over and over. Blood poured from the wounds, but the mannequin wasn't finished. Its fingers dripped with a strange, thick liquid, like some sort of polymer that oozed into Amy's open wounds. She screamed again, a sound of pure terror and agony as her arm began to freeze, turning pale and rigid. The mannequin ripped her finger clean off, and then, as if mocking her, attached it to its own hand. "Amy!" I shouted, scrambling to my feet, but it was too late. Her skin was hardening, turning glossy, her eyes wide with frozen horror. She was becoming one of them, a mannequin. The creature's twisted smile grew wider as it finished its gruesome task. It glanced at me, Amy's stolen finger still on its hand, and it blew me a kiss the way Amy had done to me. Then it crawled toward me, faster, moving like a mad predator. I bolted, sprinting as fast as I could, my breath ragged and heart pounding. I didn't stop running until I was out of the mall. Once I got home, I frantically searched the internet, my fingers trembling as I typed. It didn't take long to find the answer. SCP-847, a living mannequin, an anomalous entity that had escaped containment, and now it had Amy. I had to find help. I had to get her back. But all I could hear, over and over in my mind, was that twisted laugh and the sound of her voice, frozen in terror.
I never expected to become friends with someone like Thomas. As desk buddies, our conversations were mostly one-sided, with me doing most of the talking. Thomas was shy and strangely odd, but over time, he began to open up. He smiled more often, though there was something unsettling about his smile that I couldn't quite shake. One day, out of the blue, Thomas invited me to his house for a sleepover. I hesitated at first, but my curiosity about his mysterious family got the better of me. When I arrived, Thomas's parents greeted me with the same unsettling smiles I had seen on his face. They were overly polite, their eyes too wide, and their voices carrying an unnatural cheerfulness that made my skin crawl. During dinner, I could hardly focus on the food because I kept hearing something odd. A faint, distant crying, as if a child were sobbing somewhere in the house. No one else seemed to notice, and when I mentioned it to Thomas, he just shrugged and told me not to worry. After his parents went to bed, Thomas turned to me with a grin.
Hey, want to see my old friend?
His voice was playful, but there was an edge to it that made my stomach twist. I hesitated, but I didn't want to seem scared. Sure, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. We tiptoed through the dark hallway, the only light coming from the moon outside. I was most surprised by how the Donovan family seemed to have a thing for collecting mirrors, as they were lined up along the entire hallway. As we approached a large draped object at the end of the hall, the crying I'd heard earlier grew louder. My heart pounded in my chest. This was no trick of the imagination. Thomas stopped and whispered,
Don't worry if he looks at you, just make sure you look away fast. You'll be fine as long as you look away fast.
I didn't understand what he meant, but before I could ask, he pulled the sheet back, revealing the mirror's intricate carvings. The crying was coming from inside the mirror, but there was no one else in the room. I stared at the glass, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, or not seeing. My reflection was missing, replaced by the image of a boy I didn't recognize, standing in the corner of the mirrored space. I wanted to believe it was some sort of optical illusion, but when the boy turned around and started walking toward me, I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. Thomas, who is that? But Thomas didn't answer. When the boy's face came into view, I felt my blood turn to ice. His features were stretched and distorted, like those in a funhouse mirror, and his lips twisted into a grotesque smile as he pressed his hands against the glass. Suddenly, his fingers started pushing through the mirror's surface, reaching out toward me. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, as the boy's long, thin arms stretched toward my face.
Ryan, look away!
Thomas shouted, grabbing my arm and yanking me back. I stumbled away from the mirror, gasping for breath. I heard a faint giggle from behind the glass as the boy slowly withdrew, his smile never fading.
We have to go!
Thomas said urgently, pulling me back down the hall. We rushed back to his room where Thomas quickly locked the door behind us. I wanted to ask a million questions, but the look on Thomas's face told me now wasn't the time. We climbed into bed, but there was no way I could sleep after what I'd just seen. As Thomas's breathing evened out beside me, I knew I couldn't stay in that house. Whatever was in that mirror, it wasn't human. I waited until I was sure Thomas was asleep before quietly slipping out of bed. I tiptoed to the door and carefully opened it. As I crept toward the stairs, just as I reached the top, heavy footsteps echoed behind me. Panicking, I ducked behind the nearest door, peeking through a narrow gap. Mr. Donovan, Thomas's father, marched past, carrying something rectangular under his arm. The faint tinkling of glass reached my ears as he headed toward Thomas's room. My stomach lurched. I didn't want to know what he was planning. Suddenly, I heard Mr. Donovan shout,
"He's gone!"
Panic surged through me. I sprinted through the hallway where I heard the cries of children and the clattering of glass against wood. I finally reached the garage and bolted inside, slamming the door behind me. My hands trembled as I grabbed my bike and wheeled it to the door, pressed the button to open the garage door. Just as I managed to get it open, I saw Mr. Donovan standing in the doorway, his face twisted in anger. For the first time, he wasn't smiling. He rushed toward me. In his rush, he stumbled, and the mirror he carried crashed to the floor, shattering into pieces. The room filled with eerie laughter. When I looked back, I saw long, thin arms reaching out from the broken glass, grasping at Mr. Donovan. The lights flickered wildly as his screams filled the garage, but I didn't stay to watch. I jumped on my bike and pedaled as fast as I could, speeding down the driveway and away from that cursed house.